Donkey Kong Bananza recently released, so I decided to look back at every Donkey Kong game and rank them from worst to best. Here's my criteria for ranking on screen. Number 22, Donkey Kong Jr. Math. You can probably guess why this one's so low. Donkey Kong Jr. Math is literally just math. It's a game where you play as Donkey Kong Jr. and solve equations by climbing up vines to select numbers. That's it. That's the game. I get what Nintendo was going for. It was the early 80s, educational software was taking off, and they just wanted to get in on it. But the problem is that Donkey Kong Jr. Math just isn't fun. If you're like me, you probably played it once for like 5 minutes and just never picked it up again. This is one of those games that's more interesting as a piece of history than an actual experience. It's a spin-off of a better game, which is Donkey Kong Jr., but all the fun got stripped away in the name of learning. I also hate math. Number 21, Donkey Kong for the Game & Watch. This isn't one game, but a handful that were on little LCD screens pretending to be action-packed. There's like 6 Game & Watch DK games, and some are platformers, one's a hockey match, one's a circus, and I mean, they're just all incredibly simple because of the console that they were on. But the original Donkey Kong Game & Watch, that was the big one. It introduced the D-pad and had a clamshell design that inspired the DS a couple decades later. It's cool from a tech history point of view, even if it plays like it's on a calculator. It's not something I'd play for fun now, but I'd love to have one for my collection. Number 20, Donkey Kong 3. I don't hate Donkey Kong 3, it's not a bad game, it's just kinda weird. This is the game where instead of Mario, you play as Stanley the Bugman, spraying insect repellent at Donkey Kong to keep him from climbing down a vine. Yeah, it's less of a platformer and more of a single-screen shooter. As a kid, I had no idea this existed. I only discovered it much later when I really got into gaming. DK's barely even the villain, he's more of an obstacle, and while the gameplay is fine for what it is, it just does not feel like Donkey Kong to me. No platforming, no barrels, no iconic music, just bugs, vines, and that bug spray. But credit where it's due, it tried something different, and I respect it for changing things up, but I'm not looking to play it anytime soon. Number 19, Donkey Kong Jr. I used to play this on my 3DS, and I think the concept is cool. You play as Donkey Kong's son trying to rescue his dad from Mario, who's taken a turn as the bad guy. You could also argue he was the bad guy in the original one. But that twist alone gives it a unique charm, and has given Nintendo YouTubers plenty of content for Mario lore videos. The gameplay focused on climbing vines, avoiding birds and sparks, and collecting keys. It's definitely got more variety than the original Donkey Kong in terms of movement, but to be honest, the controls are kind of a pain. Climbing and dropping feels slow and awkward, and there's just something off about the pacing. I do like Donkey Kong Jr. for flipping the script and giving us a new perspective, but it just didn't have the same impact as its predecessor. Number 18, Donkey Kong. This is the one that started it all, and you have to respect it. It basically invented the platforming genre, it introduced Mario to the world as Jumpman, and gave us the first real story in an arcade game, even if it was very minimal. Donkey Kong kidnaps Pauline, Mario climbs girders and dodges barrels. It's simple, but it's iconic. Even today, it holds up surprisingly well. Challenge is real, the sound design is charming, and there's a reason this game is still referenced in pop culture over 40 years later. It laid the groundwork, but it's very limited in scope. There's only a handful of screens that repeat, and once you master the timing, there's not really a whole lot left to discover. Still, without this game, there's no Donkey Kong, and I'll still play it if I see it in an arcade. Number 17, Donkey Kong Barrel Blast. The first, somewhat new game on this list, coming out on the Wii. This game was just a complete mess. So it was a racing game starring Donkey Kong characters on rocket-powered barrels. It sounds weird, right? It was originally made for the GameCube with bongo controls in mind, but when they moved it to the Wii, they just made you waggle the Wii remote and nunchuck instead. And spoiler alert, it was completely awful. The controls were unresponsive, the tracks were bland, and the characters, while charming, just could not save it. It felt like a rejected minigame from Donkey Konga that somehow got turned into a full game. Yes, it has a cool character roster, but that's about all I can praise. You also don't have free movement like you would expect in a kart racer. It's just really disappointing from a game that had so much potential. Like, this feels like it's an off-brand Mario Kart knockoff, but it's actually from Nintendo. Like, no one wants to have to move the Wii remote and nunchuck to control what direction you go to. And number 16, Donkey Kong King of Swing. King of Swing is one of the weirdest Donkey Kong games ever, and I kinda love it for that. Instead of platforming in the usual way, you just control DK using the L and R buttons to grip and swing between pegs. It's physics-based and has that unique feel to it that takes a while to click, but once it does, it's fun in a strange, almost WarioWare kind of way. The visuals are cartoony and the sound effects are kinda silly, but there's something here. Definitely doesn't feel like a mainline game as it is a spin-off. And it's kind of fun, like for a Game Boy Advance game. It kind of reminds me of how I enjoyed Super Mario Pinball, where it's a little bit clunky, like it's not a masterpiece of a game or anything, but it's kind of something you just play now and then or might have nostalgia for. Number 15, Donkey Kong Land. This was Rare's attempt to bring the magic of Donkey Kong Country to the original Game Boy, and honestly, it's kind of a miracle that it even worked. They managed to capture the look and feel of DKC with all the limitations of the handheld, but let's be real, this game is hard to get back to. The visuals, while ambitious, often made it hard to see what was going on, hitboxes felt a little clunky, and without the color and personality of the SNES, it just felt muted. I never really played this much since it came out years before I was born, and it was never a must-play, so maybe others have different opinions of it. Number 14, Donkey Kong Land 3. Of the 3 land games, Donkey Kong Land 3 probably aged the best from a technical perspective. It came out later in the Game Boy's life when the Game Boy Color was starting to get popular, but this definitely does feel polished for a Game Boy game. You play as Dixie and Kitty again, much like in Donkey Kong Country 3. Most of the levels are similar in structure to that game. The difference is that the level design has been simplified for handheld play, and I actually think it works in its favor. That said, it still has the same visual issues as the rest of the Land trilogy. The lack of color hurts, and the environments blur together. It's still a nice portable bite of the DKC formula, and you might be wondering why I'm including this when I'm not including remakes or ports or anything like that, because these technically are new games, even if they are basically stripped down versions of the console versions of their counterpart Donkey Kong Country games. Number 13, Donkey Kong Land 2. So like the other 2 Land games, this is basically just a scaled down version of Donkey Kong Country 2. On one hand, Donkey Kong Country 2 is one of the greatest platformers of all time, so any handheld version of it is going to have some greatness by default. The levels, themes, music, and tight controls are mostly intact, even if simplified, but the downside is it's almost too similar to the console version. Like, there's not a lot of new content here, it's just slightly altered levels and mechanics adapted to fit the Game Boy. Still, for what it still is impressive. There's just so much charm in the original Donkey Kong Country 2, and I'll get to that later in the video, since I don't want to explain the whole game here. Number 12, Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. Let me just say, Donkey Kong Jungle Beat is bananas. This is a game where you control DK, not with a regular controller, but with a pair of bongos. One drum controls left and right. Clapping triggers attacks, and you do everything to the beat. It sounds ridiculous, but it's just a fun game. The gameplay is super tight. The game emphasizes combos and rhythm more than traditional platforming, which gives it this really unique identity. It's just a very wacky game, and they did make this on the Wii where you could use the Wii remote instead, but I think this is the definitive version. Number 11, Donkey Konga. So Donkey Konga is one of those like Nintendo what are you doing ideas that somehow worked. It's a rhythm game where you use the DK bongos once again, since one game wasn't enough for it, to hit notes in time to music. Everything from Nintendo themes to pop covers to classical music. This was actually one of the first rhythm games I played and I loved it. Like, just using the bongos for this was a blast, and the song selection was surprisingly varied, and for some reason Nintendo was just obsessed with the Donkey Kong bongos at this time. And you know what? That would not be the last time that we saw that, because number 10, Donkey Konga 2. That's right, they made a sequel. There's not really much more to say about this. It's just a new track list, and it's a very similar game, but I think it's slightly better with the added songs and quality of life improvements. Number 9, Donkey Kong Jungle Climber. Now this is really a hidden gem. Jungle Climber is the sequel to King of Swing, and it improves on everything. Better controls, crisper graphics being on the DS compared to the GBA, more fleshed out mechanics, and it's just a fun game. You still use the L and R buttons to grab pegs and swing, but now you've got puzzle solving, item collecting, and actual boss fights that feel exciting. This is so different from the country games that I played before this. I didn't really know what I would expect, but this was just like a quirky, surreal, colorful game. And I really wish Nintendo would make more Donkey Kong games like this. Like, I like the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series, but they have started to feel kind of stale. Except the new one on Switch was actually pretty good. But I'd love to see Nintendo get more creative with the Donkey Kong series like what they did with this. Number 8, Diddy Kong Racing. This one gets overlooked by a lot of people, and it's also loved by a lot of people at the same time. This really isn't a Donkey Kong game, but I'll just keep it on this list anyway. Diddy Kong Racing was Rare's answer to Mario Kart, but it went further. You had a full story mode, an overworld, boss battles, and even multiple vehicle types. It wasn't just a racer, it was an adventure. It was doing things that Mario Kart World is doing now, years ago. And the soundtrack, just absolutely amazing, like Ancient Lake, Everfrost Peak, it's just peak. Plus it also had Banjo and Conker, who I guess are canon in the Donkeyverse or whatever you want to call it. It may not be as mechanically tight as later kart racers, but it had ambition, and in some ways it feels like a lost opportunity for DK to lead more games outside of platformers. We actually did get a remaster of this on the DS, and I mean, it's alright. It's kind of like when they made Super Mario 64 DS, where I don't know why they made it on here instead of the Wii, but I guess if you have that, it's still worth playing. Number 7, Donkey Kong 64. 64 had enormous expectations. It was Rare's first 3D Donkey Kong game following up the DKC trilogy, and on paper, it's pretty impressive. The hub worlds are massive, the lighting and effects were cutting edge, and at the time, you had 5 playable Kongs, all with unique moves and collectibles. You yeah, so many collectibles in this game. And that's the thing, the game has a reputation for being bloated, and that reputation is justified. It's like you need a literal spreadsheet to track what bananas go with which Kong and which level. Sometimes you'd enter a room, realize you had the wrong Kong, backtrack to switch, then forget where you were going. I mean, I still love this game, and I love how bold it is, and I love how creative it is. Like, we didn't get another 3D Donkey Kong game until literally this week when Donkey Kong Bananza came out, so over 25 years. But I also love that it includes the entire original arcade game as a requirement. I love that it starts with the DK rap, which is just like pure 90s Nintendo, and we even got it back in Bonanza. This game's just a good time, even if there are issues like how much of a collect-a-thon it is, which isn't necessarily a bad thing for a game to be a collect-a-thon, but it does get a little bit excessive. But I just wish we got more 3D Donkey Kong games in the past 25 years that could have expanded on this. Number 6, Donkey Kong Country. This game wasn't just a turning point for Donkey Kong, it was a turning point for Nintendo. Donkey Kong had been a secondary character in the arcade for over a decade, but with Donkey Kong Country, he got a starring role again in a real full game. I still remember playing this game for the first time. Like, this was past the point where the technology was impressive, so I can't really give my opinion on if I played it in the SNES era, because this game was actually very impressive for the time with the pre-rendered graphics. But what's really cool is that this game still holds up today. It may not look as good, but the level design is tight, the pacing is nearly perfect, and then there's some great songs like Aquatic Ambience. It wasn't just music, like, they just did a great job giving this game a great vibe. And even though this one's the most basic of the trilogy, there's just something in the simplicity. I think these games would really benefit from remakes. I know a lot of people hate quote-unquote remake culture, but these games are 30 years old, and yeah, I mean, they still do hold up, but they are definitely showing their age. And we did get a remake of Super Mario RPG, which was an SNES game, and it turned out fantastic. So I'd love if we got something like this. And number 5, Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble. I'll be honest, this one took a long time to grow on me. Donkey Kong Country 3 was always the odd one out in the original trilogy to me. Donkey Kong himself is missing, again. The setting is more industrial and wilderness focused than jungle centric. Play as Dixie and Kitty. This was always weird to me. It felt like a weird downgrade from Diddy, Kong to be specific. And the overworld, it felt kind of like a board game, weirdly segmented. But returning to it years later, I found myself appreciating how much this game tried to do differently. It has some of the most complex level design in the series, levels with changing water levels, time-based gimmicks, and genuinely clever puzzles. Dixie's helicopter spin is still one of the most satisfying moves in any platformer, and the soundtrack? It's underrated. It's not as catchy as the first two games, but it's moodier and more atmospheric. Is it the best in the trilogy? No, but it's the most experimental, and that makes it special in its own way. It's a little messy, but it's ambitious, and I respect that. It's my second favorite of the original trilogy. Number 4, Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy Kong's Quest. So this is it, my favorite in the original trilogy. It just pretty much gets everything right, from gameplay, music, tone, art direction. The pirate theme felt darker, the enemies looked meaner, the music sounded lonelier, melancholy, but there was just something beautiful about that sadness. It made the game feel like a real journey, and the levels, masterpieces. Bramble Scramble, Wub Woods, Haunted Hall, they're all just so memorable. The tension of those final boss fights, the pride of 100 to completion, the awe of how mature this game felt, and the music. David Wise composed a soundtrack that honestly belongs in a museum. Tickerbush Symphony is the track that made me realize how good the music in this game was. Number 3, Donkey Kong Country Returns. Returns was really my introduction to Donkey Kong, or at least the Donkey Kong Country series. I missed the SNES era and DK64 era growing up, but I got this on the Wii, and it pretty much got me into the series. It's a hard game, no question. The challenge curve is steep, and some of the later levels were really difficult for younger me, but it felt fair. It made me want to get better at it. There's this rhythm to the platforming that just feels so good once it clicks. You bounce between enemies, roll through obstacles, and everything has this beautiful flow when you get in the groove. The rocket barrel stages, painful. The minecart levels, cinematic. The silhouette stages, I love these levels. Like, I was so glad when these came back in Tropical Freeze. The motion controls were a bummer, but it didn't stop me from loving this game, and it proved that DK could still hang with the best of them. And you could also play this game on the 3DS if you really want to, but I recommend picking up the Switch version if you haven't played it. Number 2, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Mechanically, visually, and musically, this game is perfect. This is the best 2D Donkey Kong game. This is the peak of what Donkey Kong can be. Well, it was for a while, and I'll get to that soon. Retro Studios took everything they learned from Returns, fixed almost every flaw, and layered in the sense of artistry that surprised even the most die-hard fans. The level variety is insane. Underwater coral reefs that bloom with jellyfish, volcanic caverns that crumble you as you run, frozen forests, such jazzy tribal beats. I used to love playing the multiplayer on this. And it's really sad that this game didn't sell that well because it was on the Wii U, so I'm glad it got another chance on the Switch. Each level doesn't just challenge you, it tells a story. Like Grassland Groove is more than a song, it's like a celebration. And Miss Abyss is a vibe, and Wingding is just like a symphony of silhouettes and percussion. These aren't stages, they're like musical compositions with platformers layered on top. The controls are tight as always, and each Kong adds something new. You have Dixie, Cranky, and even Funky on the Switch version with the new Funky mode, which is just one of the funniest additions to have on the cover. This isn't just a great Donkey Kong game, it might be one of the best 2D platformers ever made, and would be the best Donkey Kong game for a long time, at least in my opinion. That is until this week, because at number 1 we have Donkey Kong Bananza. This game that literally just came out, but I already think it's the best Donkey Kong game, and by a good amount. We haven't got a new 3D Donkey Kong game in over 25 years, and Bonanza takes advantage of the newer technology perfectly. Being able to break through the ground, the new characters as well as some fan favorites returning, the music, but there's gorgeous levels also, just such varied environments with so much detail and a fair amount of collectibles this time. I want to say a lot more about this, but I also want to keep it as spoiler free as possible since a lot of you probably haven't played this yet or are very early in your playthrough. Obviously, being a Switch 2 game, it has a lot more it can do. Like, I don't even think this game would work on the Switch. And you could tell the Odyssey team made this. It's very apparent because there's just all these different areas that, while not exactly an open world, the areas are open and all feel different. Now, one thing I will say is I'm not sold on DK's new design that we've been seeing since the Super Mario Bros. Movie came out, but I mean, I've gotten used to it. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah, I prefer the old design, but I don't think it's the end of the world also. But Bonanza is also an example of a game that's worth its price. Many people were rightfully upset when Mario Kart World was announced to be $80, but I've seen little complaints about Bonanza being $70 because it actually feels worth it with all the details it has. It's basically Donkey Kong Odyssey. Don't just listen to me talk about it here. If you have a Switch 2, go play this now. Maybe I'll make another video on this a little bit in the future with more spoilers so I can talk more about it because there's just so much to say about this. And that's my ranking. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on Bonanza. A lot of people have asked me to make this ranking for years, and to be honest, the Donkey Kong series as a whole isn't my favorite. I love the country games, but then there's a bunch of more obscure games that I did play and maybe enjoyed or didn't enjoy as much, like Donkey Kong Math. But with Bonanza coming out and it getting me back into the series, it made me just want to make this ranking. So please like, comment, and subscribe if you have not. Be sure to check out my other content. This has been Domain with Game Domain. Thank you for watching.